Welcome to another episode of Lee with Jeffrey podcast. I'm Jeffrey Hernandez, your host, and it's my honor today to have with us a principal, a teacher, and a student who will join us in the discussion around the crossroads of education, how we future-proof what our students will be engaging in to ensure that they are ready for the world of tomorrow. We're very excited to have their perspectives at the table, but more importantly, to receive the direction from them as to how the policymakers and the educators around the world can take into consideration what the future of education will be. Why don't we start with telling the audience a little bit about yourself?
My name is Sean Martinez. I am a high school senior at Victory Charter School, and the way I like to live is by going for my dreams and going for what I aspire.
I love it. I love it. How about you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Olivia Rivera, and I'm the proud principal of Victory Charter School 612 over in Osceola County. This is the second school that I have been the principal in the NAEP school network, and it is always a privilege to be able to work with the students at the school sites, as well as the teachers, staff, and the management company as a whole.
Awesome. How about you?
Well, I am Miss Peralta. I am a very proud ELA teacher for high school at Victory Charter Schools, Osceola County. And I've been teaching for about 11 years now. And just, I love to give students purpose. And that's why we're here today, to give people purpose and to guide them.
Well, I'm so excited to have the conversation, a very important one. We've had two other episodes in which we've had students. I think you were part of one of our episodes where we talked about the importance of educators and parents and policymakers coming together to understand that what currently is happening in education cannot continue because we're not really future-proofing our education to make sure our students are ready. So as you think about this topic in this conversation, what is your position on whether our current educational system is preparing our students for the world that awaits?
I think overall the current education is preparing us in a way, but I think that there could be a lot more that can be done in order to get us to where we want to be in our futures.
Can you be a little bit more specific on when you say a lot more that can be done?
I feel like a lot of the core classes are very outdated, and I feel like there should be classes that teach us more about real life scenarios rather than the core math, English, science, and while those are very important, I feel like we don't get enough teaching of the real life that we will end up having to experience after high school.
So if I understand you correctly, you feel that there is an absence of real life experiences for the students and real life strategies that they're going to need in their day-to-day.
Yes.
How about the other ladies?
I mean, I think teachers should be empowered to be confident in the classroom and try to, even though we are following curriculum, we try to bring those experiences into the classroom, right? There's a lot of schools that are like IB schools, and they really promote like soft skills, being empathetic, because at the end of the day, we want to make good civilians, right? We want to create good citizens for our society. And that starts with not just you were saying about the subjects that we teach, like math and English and all that. There's a way for teachers to be able to be empowered to mix those things. Like you could have a math problem that has a specific scenario where they problem solve, but then they have to make a decision, and you can make that like bonus points. You know what I mean? There are ways, I think, maybe because teachers get trained, like we take trainings and everything, but maybe empowering them and giving them the confidence to like trust them in the classroom and give them the curriculum and be like, hey, that you follow these standards and we do this curriculum, but what's your take on it based on a specific class? Like maybe in this class you have a lot of ESOL students, and you need to explain, I don't know, poetry, right? So what do? Like you can do Pablo Neruda in English and in Spanish. You can show them a video. You can make them create art based on what they understood, because every, point of view is different. So yeah, I think those real life experiences can be experienced in the classroom, but teachers should be more empowered to do that.
You bring to the table an interesting point with regards to empowerment of teachers. The original question around, do you feel that the current educational system is preparing our students for the future or not. What's your take on that? What's your position on that?
I think we are, but I think that a lot of our leaders in education today need to understand or maybe be more open-minded when it comes to the jobs that haven't been created yet, because the future, we don't know what's going to happen. We can only make inferences, intelligent guesses, and we can try to prepare them for what we don't know is going to happen next. So because technology is so prevalent and every day it's changing and it's so advanced, we need to think, what are the skills and what do we need to teach our kids so they can be prepared for the jobs that aren't created yet?
So currently right now, there needs to be an adjustment that you think should come through empowerment for our students to be prepared for the unknown. How about you, Ms. Rivera? What do you think?
I feel that education as a whole and in many school sites and many classrooms across the nation, we need a mindset shift. And we really desperately need that, because if we continue along the path that we are never going to meet students where they are, because they will feel unsatisfied with what they are being provided, because the careers that they are interested in don't necessarily require university, don't necessarily require college. They don't require these pathways that were of a more traditional mindset that schools prepare students to go into universities and colleges. And that is not necessarily the case for now a majority of our students. And they want and desperately seek out these skills for them to be able to monetize from that. And in order for us to operate as a school that, and as an educational system as a whole, that is meeting the clients that we have as students, we have to tailor our approach to that specifically. So I don't feel that that is being done in every single school across the nation and every single classroom, because it also, to Ms. Peralta's extent, heavily relies on the teacher themselves embracing those concepts and putting that into practice within their classroom.
I think that was very well stated, and something that I've given a lot of thought to is the fact that the reason that it's not happening in the majority of the classrooms is because the understanding of what that looks like is really gray right now. I don't think that as an educational system, we've done a very good job worldwide of preparing our educators to be 4 steps ahead of what's evolving and changing on a daily basis. And as a result, the fear of the inability to deliver with quality, since teachers by nature are high perfectionists, right? They have a high level of perfection that they always aim to acquire and that they aim to attain. And more importantly, they like to be good at what they do. And so because there's an unknown in everything that they're doing right now and meeting the needs of the students, they revert back to what they know how to do and what they're comfortable in. So I agree with you, Ms. Rivera, that what we're doing right now is something that's not going to prepare the future of this country, which is the students, to be competitive and ready to lead this country in the direction that we're headed. Because currently the people that are preparing them are not being provided the right resources and skill set to prepare them. I think of when I was in the classroom. If I were in a classroom right now, I wouldn't have all the skill sets to be able to prepare the students for the world of tomorrow, because I haven't been provided that skill set. And so I'm very empathetic to the challenge and struggle that the educators are facing, that they're trying to do their very best, but they feel the sense of failure each and every day because they know in their heart they're not meeting the needs of the students.
And if I can add to that, this is trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. A lot of the time, for example, in my perspective, when I'm giving a class and I have this awesome lesson plan, and okay, it's going to work. And then for specific classrooms, it may work because we have different students, right? If it doesn't work for a class, I have to take a risk and I have to adapt. And I have to be like, okay, so what can I do right now so the objective is met, right? So they can hit the standard. So I think we need to be more risk takers, right? Because a lot of teachers don't like change. A lot of people, change isn't easy, okay? Let's be real. Change isn't easy, but we need to take that leap because fear is a choice, okay? It's there, you feel it, but you have to take that leap and you have to take the risk to do something different to see if it works. And if it doesn't, you know what? We tried this. I thought it would work. Let's see what else we can do. And then collaborate. Like teachers need to talk to each other, administrators and teachers need to talk to each other, but there needs to be an open conversation about, I tried this and I failed. And it's not a bad thing. What can we do to fix it?
I think if I hear you correctly, one thing that you're sharing that's really powerful for our audience to really note take on is the fact that we need the conversation to start. And I think that around the country, a lot of people are fearful of the conversation and what the outcome of that conversation is going to be. But bottom line is we need students at the table. We need parents at the table. We need teachers, administrators, and policymakers, because if the conversation doesn't start now, we're going to get further behind, because in avoiding the conversations, we're actually not able to plan the actions necessary to make the change. I would challenge us to think about in this conversation the student mindset. Right now, each and every day, they're waking up for school, and I hear it in my daughter, my son. You know, Dad, school's not really doing it for me. It's not really preparing me for what I'm going to do. It's not really aligned to the career that I'm aiming to exercise, take and do. And so we really need to think about, from the student mindset, what is out there and how do we adjust in the time being while this conversation takes place.
I think that comes from all speaking to the students. You have to speak to your stakeholders and know your specific community that you're working and operating in order to meet their needs. Without having that conversation with your daughter, you would never know that the school's not meeting her needs. Without having the conversation with our students in our school site, we would not know what elective classes they want, what are their interests, what are they wanting to pursue after high school, for us to be able to put those into play within our school site. So I think it all starts with a simple conversation and being able to have that openness to say, okay, this is where we are at right now, but we want to change to better suit the people that are in our building specifically. And once we have that information, then we can start putting into play the changes that need to be made.
How do you think we could have that conversation? You being a student currently in a school and understanding what we're discussing here today, what do you think would be the first steps that we should take to have that conversation in a meaningful and change-oriented way?
I think definitely talking in the classrooms. It's the best way to communicate with your students, because you have them there for a prolonged amount of time. So why not take time out of that class to ask, hey, what do you need? What would you like from us to be able to get what you need in your education? Doing that, and I feel like also doing meetings with certain groups of students, doing surveys, they're all very good ways of getting information out of them without pushing it in a way.
So you're thinking that if the conversations are held in each classroom individually with their students, they'll have a more personalized approach to express themselves? And do you think that should be structured on questions, or should it be structured on students just being open about what they feel? How do you think that the educators across the country should go about doing that conversation?
I think the students should be able to just open up on how they feel, because I think if it's asked as questions, these students won't be as open because they feel like they need to give the right answer. But if they open up the way they feel they can, then they'll be honest with you, and they'll tell you, hey, this is what I need. This is what should happen, what I think should happen.
So this is for some of our listeners and viewers who are now anxiously waiting to see what next steps you're going to tell them. What would be that first question that would spark the conversation? If you could select as a student the question you think would open the floor for that type of a discussion and argument, what do you feel that would be?
I think being straightforward, asking them what would interest you in a class, what should us as teachers and as educators bring to the table in order for you to be interested in learning, in order for you to feel prepared for your future.
I love it. How can I meet your needs, right? What do I need to do? I love that question. So for our viewers that are listening, you heard straight from a student that conversation needs to start in the classroom, and that it shouldn't be 10, 12, 15 questions. It just needs to have the first one to spark the conversation, and then everything should go naturally and fluid through the process based on the responses. And he gave the suggestion that the question should be around, what does this classroom need to be like for you to have your needs met? And so I encourage you to take that opportunity to have that conversation. I also heard from Ms. Peralta that we should definitely have the conversation with all stakeholders in a committee, in a forum in which you hear the voices of parents, students, teachers, administrators, and policymakers, and that the conversation needs to take place now, because it could be that we have it too late for change to actually occur in time to make sure our students are ready for the future. So taking all that into account, if we were to look at our current educators, our teachers, our administrators, what do we feel are those areas of gap that currently are in place that educators should develop ways in which they can improve those skill sets? What are the gaps that you feel that developers and people that provide professional development should be preparing to give those skills to those teachers?
I would say, first of all, to have them be comfortable in the classroom, because a classroom is four walls. But the moment that you, as a leader, as an educator, you realize, I'm going to mold the minds of tomorrow. This is my universe and my domain. At least that's how I see it. It changes because it's your stage, and it changes every class. And maybe feel comfortable being yourself. Because I will say, Mr. Hernandez, there was something you told me years ago. You told me, and I've never forgotten it. You told me, you have the luxury of being yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's always stuck with me, because I am myself, but I am a persona professionally, and I have the luxury that I bonded with my students, and they know how I am professionally, but they know that I care. Do you think, Ms. Peralta, that because we're referring to gaps, that right now there's a gap of teachers feeling empowered to be themselves? Empowered to be themselves? I think they want to be themselves, but they may be afraid to, because maybe they don't know that they're allowed to. I don't know if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Because when you're back in my parents' day, teachers were so looked up, and, your teacher, tu profesor, your professor. Now, unfortunately, I feel that has gone down. And a lot of teachers that got into studying education are like, why am I not being, celebrated by the young people, or, you know what I mean? Like, it's changed. And I think that maybe teachers want to teach the way they want to teach, but they're afraid to come to the table, to say what they want to say, to maybe teach differently. Be like, hey, how about I suggest this way? So you think that a module or a focus from leadership should be on helping teachers become aware and have clear understanding on they can be themselves? What other gaps do you think we have right now that we have to get ahead of in order to make sure that our classrooms are preparing our students from the human capital perspective, meaning from our students, from our parents, from our teachers, which are all the individuals that have to be able to come together and have the skill sets to prepare the students? She mentioned that there's a gap in the teachers on being able to feel that they can be themselves. What else do you think?
Adding on to that would be the engagement between everyone, and that goes for students, parents, teachers, even guardians. They're not engaged enough together to be able to understand the overall experience. Mm-hmm. Students and teachers can't engage in a way where they feel comfortable enough to be in a room and enjoy what they're doing. The teachers give them a lesson, but they don't engage. So then the students just like doing the work, and that's it. That's the entire class. And it makes them feel as if it's not fun for them. They dread going into that class.
So engagement strategies that teachers can utilize to connect with their students during the instructional process and make sure that students are feeling that as they're learning, they're having fun.
Yep.
What other gaps do you think we have to address?
In my mind, when I think of my school site, other school sites that I've been at, I think of three main gaps that I have seen. And the first one is regarding empathies for the student's life and experience. That I feel that sometimes teachers are not forgetful, but they don't take into the whole picture that this is a child that just because they're going through a struggle that is not of your same magnitude, maybe, it does not mean that that's not the biggest struggle that that child is going through at that moment. And taking that into account when they are interacting with students is sometimes a gap that I've seen, along with gaps in technology, which is something that goes into what Ms. Peralta talked about, that the teacher needs to be comfortable with utilizing the technology to its full extent to be able to make that an enriching part of the actual lesson itself, and not something that is, okay, we just use the technology for this and I'm too afraid to use it for anything else. So that's the only thing that we're going to use it, because they're afraid of the power that could yield, like the Spider-Man quote, like, with great power comes great responsibility. Okay, with that great power of the technology in your classroom comes the responsibility of you as a teacher to make sure that you are prepared enough to actually utilize it within the classroom. And then the last gap that I feel is parents have gone through so much. And education has changed so much in the last 10 years of pre-COVID, during COVID, and after COVID, that parents have seen their child change throughout this experience and seen the whole educational system shift as a whole. And I feel that parents need that education of how they can help their child at home and how they are able to be a successful parent of the new age learner that they have now at home, that is completely different than a child 20 years ago that they may have encountered.
You know, I agree with everything that's been stated so far, and I would add to that time is going to be very important for the conversations and for the design of this work. I think that the types of lessons that we as educators are going to have to provide for our students is going to require time to design. And sometimes because of the lack of time, we shortchange the quality of the lesson. We cheat the quality of the lesson by not being able to give it our all as we're designing it. And I think in this new era, because it's so multifaceted in how we have to prepare for a lesson and the diversified manners in which we have to educate the students, that it's going to take that thinking time and that planning time. So I think time is a gap right now because it's not embedded into the workday, and we know that there's a huge effort on that work-life balance circumstance. I also think that the policies of the traditional schooling right now are interfering with the innovation that our students are seeking. We have still policies around students must go to school 180 days. They must go to school 7 hours a day. They must take these courses before they graduate. And in that process, I think we are really restricting the innovation that our students are screaming for through their actions and their behaviors, because we're trying to still fit the triangle in the box, the triangle being the innovation and the desires of our students, when the box being the requirement. And I think that the seat time requirement in education is outdated. Right now, it's not necessarily sitting in a chair for 7 hours that makes you more educated or more proficient in the content. There's definitely an importance in us understanding that the way seat time should be evaluated has to be different, and that the routine of going to school every day, 7 hours a day, taking the same classes, being on the same bell schedule, seeing the same teachers, and engaging in the same 3-cycle 20-minute rotation is creating a sense of lack of motivation and interest for our students. And so I really urge all of us as educators here and you as a student leader, and those listeners that are here with us today through the cameras, that we have to be able to forget everything we've experienced to this moment to really design the future of education. If we're going to remember everything and want to bring it into the now without understanding that we have to go back to the drawing table, because students are different. They're going to be different every single year. If you look at our kindergartners now compared to our second graders, they're very, very, very different. Look at our second graders compared to our fifth graders, very different. And so a year is changing what the students are asking for. And I really think we need to be urgent about not allowing the past to imprison the design and the innovation of the present, and more importantly, the future of our students. I also want to comment on something that you stated, and the engagement is different. I think for too long, we've been married to the student-to-student engagement, teacher-to-student engagement, student-to-teacher engagement, which is a formula to describe engagement. But in reality, what makes engagement the most connecting when it's a teacher and a student is the dynamic engagement that takes place, that's not scripted and that's not necessarily fitting into a formula. And I think one of the gaps that we have to prepare our educators for is understanding how to identify what that engagement looks like in order for it to take place. So I think from today, just the conversations we've had, it empowers me as a leader, and I think it should empower leaders across the nation to understand the past is the past. It no longer can be the present. And the present is only going to be as fruitful as we make it with our own actions and urgency to prioritize the change that is needed and inevitable if we're going to keep students in school. Because I do think that very soon students are going to make the choices to go around it and seek education in non-traditional ways, because the traditional way is just not working for them any longer. Any additions to that, or any thoughts on that, or anything that you want to comment?
I do. Excuse me. I do agree with the students wanting to go a non-traditional route, because the traditional route gets boring, because it's happening now. A lot of students are dropping out and going for their dreams without high school. And sometimes it works, other times it doesn't, and then they have to go back for a GED or something like that, and then it puts a strain on their future just because they did not find the traditional education good enough for them. And I feel like that's not their fault entirely. It's more of a fault on the school system.
Yeah, we're failing the students.
And
but I like the way you stated it, the good enough. I really would like for you to elaborate on that, because that word, just as you stated it, I got goosebumps, because it's true. There's a lot of students that are thinking that education's not good enough. Why do you think that?
Again, it's the idea of still getting your core classes, and those are still important, and they get taught, but they get taught in a way where it's not engaging enough for the students. It's not in a way where they find it fun or they find it interesting. And then at the same time, they have these electives and these side classes that they also don't enjoy, because it's not what they're interested in. They don't have variety. It's all the same stuff every day.
Well, something else is that I feel that we're not allowing the opportunity within the classes because of the number of standards that we have to teach and the number of benchmarks that we have to meet to really teach the real world skills. It was interesting, and I can only relate to it now from, my son being 19 and graduating, and he did not know what income tax was. He did not know what it was to establish a corporation, or what it is to decide if it's an S corporation or a regular C corp, and so many different things that are important, because a lot of the young children nowadays are aspiring to be entrepreneurs, but are graduating, have a beautiful vision and don't know how to execute it because the skills are not there. And I think if we're going to future-proof education, we need to take into account that time that's required for the real world skills. What do you think, Ms. Rivera?
I think that it comes with the realistic aspect of it. Teachers nowadays and schools are put under a lot of pressure to perform in a set amount of time, and that after the student takes the exam, they're essentially done for the year. Is a lot of mindsets for schools and a lot of educators that, oh, they took that test, okay, at the end of the year we're done, when there's still more days of school. And if that is what our mindset is all around, of just teaching to pass this test, then we are truly doing a real disservice to our students, because they deserve to be able to have this information to be successful. So many jobs and careers are now moving virtual and remote because so many more people want that flexibility to be able to also pursue their other passions that they have in life. And I think back to how modern day inventions and technology, that at the first start, when airplanes were first invented, people were against it. They were very against that thought of people flying in the sky. But now we have that as a regular and as a norm, showing that we can evolve so much over a time span. And that is what needs to happen within education. So that way we can meet the needs of all the future possibilities that are going to come. But it needs to start with an individualized approach to education, where students have more option and more autonomy within their own education, because they want to be able to be successful and really chart their own course.
What do you think?
Well, Ms. Rivera, you mentioned the want, right? And I think a lot of our students don't have the want because they don't have a purpose. And I'm going to connect this like a teacher, because I'm a teacher. When we do close reading, the reason for close reading is that you read multiple times to understand the reading deeply, right? Every little detail. Usually kids don't like that. But the way that you make it fun or engaging for them is to give them a purpose. So a lot of our students, unfortunately, don't have a purpose. They don't understand why they're in school. And when you ask them the question, why are you in school? Oh, because, well, I have to come here. I was like, okay, but let's think about that for a minute. And going back to what you guys said about being individual with the kids and trying to make them understand why we're here, right? Because to a lot of them, they don't want to be here because it's a task, that it's something they need to do. But if we ask them, right, again, open-minded, open conversation on the table, what is your purpose of being here? What do you want from life? Oh, I want to be happy. What does that look like for you, right? For some people, right, because all of our realities are different. We were raised differently. We have different backgrounds, different cultures. What is happiness to you? Oh, I want to move out of my parents' house and be able to be independent. Okay, how do you plan on doing that? Oh, I want to have a job. Well, you know how you can get a job? We're going to teach you how to write a resume. But you have to, you know what I mean? We have to engage them with giving them the purpose of, you're going to study and take these classes, and we're going to help you achieve what you want.
You know, as you're saying that, I'm thinking to myself that there's a greater, because when particularly, and I'm dating myself, but when I was growing up, uniformity in our outcomes was very common. We all knew we needed to go to school, we needed to finish high school, we needed to go to college, we needed to get a job. Our part-time job should be aligned to the college that we, the degree that we wanted to get, so we could get experience. We needed to buy a house. It was very uniform in what the expectations and outcomes were, because it was very driven by the parents and the education we were receiving at home through their own modeling or their expectation setting. We did not have access to the digital platforms to gain the knowledge that currently students have. as I'm listening to you, the importance of the purpose conversation is really critical, because right now there's so much diversity in what students are aspiring to be, that there is not a one size fits all for what the educational experience has to be for students. And I think where they're tuning education out, or blaming the school walls as not an option or not meeting their needs, is because it may be that we're still operating under that uniformity concept, that everyone's on the same path. And in reality, in the school, you could have 700 students and you have 700 different paths that are available and attainable, but require different trainings to get there. And I, as I'm hearing you, I think that we need to spend more time in designing that venue for that purpose to come alive, for everyone in the school to know what career the student is after, what is their goal, what is their plan. And as much as the teachers and administrators and even fellow students can relate to that, the more purposeful that education is going to be for our students. I also wanted to state an additional or enrich something that you stated, which I think is really important, is that the want can be like the wave of an ocean at many different times for a student, depending on the just-in-time experience they're having with that class. I know that taking my daughter to school every day, in the morning, if she has A day, she has a different energy than if she has B day. And when you ask her, it's because, oh, today's B day, just, the experiences today are just not going to be something I'm connected to, versus A day. So if you think about it, that want it changes with what they're going to engage in that day, and how we diversify that engagement is going to be very significant. Because right now, our students are looking for alternatives. They don't want to come to school, and the best part of their school is just the experiences they have at lunch. And that's really a sad thing to think about, when there's a lot of good that still is coming out of school and that students need in order to reach all those dreams that they have. I don't know if anyone wants to add anything to that.
When you brought up the different experience on the different days of school, I can relate to that very well. On certain days, I look forward to it because I have classes that are given and are more fun because of the teachers that make it more fun. And then there's other classes where the teacher doesn't put as much effort into the class. So you're sitting there for a pretty long time, since, the classes are a little longer, just sitting there either doing work or just listening to them speak. And it gets tiring, it gets unmotivating to want to get up for school on those days, when you're just going to be spending 7 hours of your day just sitting in a chair, either listening to your teacher speak or doing paperwork.
That's a really powerful statement, listening to them speak or doing paperwork. And I think that the generation that's currently in the schools has so much value to time. They really value time because they don't want to waste time. They really have mastered an understanding that time is not here forever and that it goes very quickly. Even as you hear young kids speak, they're really referring to time very differently than we refer to it. It's taken me 5 decades to really refer to time as it's going very quickly and it's not here. But our new generation is really already building a life around that concept. And so from what you said, I would see where they would take offense to going to a place where you're just going to talk to me, or you're going to give me an assignment and do paperwork, and then I'm wasting 8 hours here when I can be doing so much more with the 8 hours. What do you think, Ms. Rivera?
I think that the younger generation and how information is accessed by everyone has changed with modern technology, with TikTok, with YouTube, with how we receive just simply the news. We are getting those updates in an instant and very quickly, and anything that is fluff is seen as a waste of time by the students. And I can understand that because as an administrator and as a teacher, your time is so valuable because you only have so many hours in a day to be able to get the job accomplished and to make sure all of the tasks are completed. And if I had to sit through an hour-long meeting that could have been reduced down to 20 minutes, then I can understand and I can relate to students' frustrations behind that of wanting to be able to not expedite, but consolidate their information in an impactful way. So if you can have the same impact in 45 minutes as you would 90 minutes, the other 45 minutes could be used in a different pathway and a different energy to be able to benefit the student. But that truly comes from having high quality education and high quality teaching within a classroom to be able to embrace that, or else the student is frustrated and the teacher is feeling unsuccessful and unsatisfied with their own delivery of the lesson.
Well, if you think about it, as I sit here and listen to what you're saying and what everyone has shared, students have the power of choice as to who they listen to now. Because if you think about it, when they sit with their phone and they're scrolling up and down, they are selecting who they stay on and who they listen. And most of the times is who visually they respect. So if you think about it, I look at my daughter or my son when they're on the phone, they're looking for, let's say, the person that has success written all over them, in the visuals and the pictures and everything. But those individuals that are creating those reels or those YouTube shorts for students to see take time to write the script, take time to stage the environment, take time to make sure that all of the props for the video are going to be attractive to the audience. They take time to analyze the audience that they're going to be speaking to and make sure that the words of the script align to the audience. And then when they're performing the reel, they're doing it in a short, to the point, and value added type of impactful way. And I think that a lot of us as educators, all of us included, are really missing the boat. We are not looking at our classroom experience as preparing to record an Instagram reel or preparing to record a YouTube short or a TikTok video. And I think if we looked at lesson planning as the script writing, if we looked at lesson planning and the preparation of our materials as the props for our recording, if we looked at the actual delivery of instruction when you're content recording, and if you allow the information gathered in the lesson to be your editing part, the students would be more engaged. And more importantly, if we analyze the audience of each class period as a different audience. You can't present the same type of reel to the 50 to 60-year-old audience as you would to the 18 to 25 because they wouldn't understand the language. Yet we do one type of lesson all day for all the students. And then we want them to stay engaged and not scroll up. And so I think if, as an educator, we change our mindset to, we have to ensure the students in our classroom don't scroll up on our video and that they actually stay there and click like, they share it and they comment. I think we might revolutionize the engagement and interest of our students. I think we're not looking at what they're choosing to get information from and emulating that in our experience for them. What do you think about that?
I think it's true. It should definitely be like that, especially attention spans these days are extremely low. And it's especially because of that method of swiping and on Instagram and stuff like that, where you're just swiping and all your attention is put onto what you find interesting. What you don't, you can just swipe up. It's whatever to you. And I think the way you brought it up was very, very nice. It should be like that. You should be planning for each specific class. I feel like that would be more engaging for the each class, because each class is different. Each person has their different ways of learning, their different ways of being interested in something. But if you make it the same for everyone, it's going to get to a point where it gets dry, if that makes sense. each student is just going to be like, okay, well, it's just this again. So what am I coming here for? So I do agree with you. And it should be a new, fresh script every few days so that the students stay engaged and they stay also fresh in their learning every week.
You know, and as you said that, it's true because even if you have someone that you've already chosen to be someone you're going to follow, if every day you're listening to the same thing, there's going to come a point where you may not unfollow, but you're not going to be listening to it. And so it's really a perspective for all of us as educators to consider, that we have to adapt our mindsets to make our classrooms a content recording room. And change what we're doing if we want the next decade of students to pay attention to us, because it's not going to get any better with regards to what they want to see in the room. It's only going to become more rigorous around the expectation because their sources are becoming more able for them to make choices. And now they don't only have one platform. If they're not a TikTok person, they can go to Instagram. If they're not on Instagram, they can go to YouTube. There's so many different things. And so by the time they sit in the classroom, chances are what they're telling them, they already know. The other thing that I wanted to share is most recently there was a lot of people that were sharing online the fact that the current generation of students do not want to learn the past, because the past is no longer relevant to their present, or it doesn't give them skill sets for the future. What I mean by the past is a lot of students are saying, why do I need to learn about a history that didn't even anticipate what we're dealing with right now? And most of what they encountered, I cannot even apply to my current life. What are our thoughts on that?
Well, I think history is very important. We should study our past and reflect on it so it doesn't repeat itself if it's not something that we can take from it and thrive. Because like in the there's a really awesome author, I'm being a teacher again, Ray Bradbury, Fahrenheit 451, and when I taught it a few years ago, a lot of the students got a little scared because they were like, but when was this written? Like in the 50s? Like, why is this sound like what's happening now? I'm like, because his purpose was to prevent, not to predict, but it happened, didn't it? So I do believe we need to study our past. We need to reflect upon it and take what we can from it. So we can do better.
What about you? What do you think?
I do agree. I think history is very important for that same reason. You have to learn the past in order not only to prevent it from happening, all the bad things from happening again, but to also learn how we got here. What happened and what did we as humanity do to get to this point. But it's also, in a way, where it's that same curriculum being taught over and over and over again, the same way, where it gets dry, like I said earlier. I feel like if it was taught in a different, new, fresh manner, it could be a lot more interesting to these kids that might not find interest or might not find a purpose in learning it this way. Maybe mixing it with current society. Really teaching them as to why it's important now to learn that now and how we got here, rather than just teaching us the past and saying, oh, Einstein did this. And that leave it at that,
So you're saying, which I agree from a personal perspective, that history is important. I think the way history was taught in the past and the way our current generation calls for history to be taught has to be very different. It should be more about how to take what happened in the historical perspective and apply it to today. And I think that application may be missing. What do you think, Ms. Rivera?
I think that I 100% agree with you, Jeffrey, in regards to applying it in a different manner. However, I do think the importance of students learning about history is to be able to understand the importance of certain events that were pivotal in the shift in people's mindset. And that mindset shift is able to happen at certain key points in history. So we're able to have a true appreciation for the evolution of things. However, I am always apprehensive about history being taught because it can be taught in so many different biases. And that can be a very controversial thing within a classroom, is that you never know how the history is being taught and from what side of things are being told. And you always want to make sure that you are equipping the students to be able to look at things from many different perspectives. And that when we're talking about different historical aspects, we need to look at it from, if we're talking about U.S. history, from the U.S.'s perspective, but also from an outside global perspective, in order for students to be better equipped to utilize that information. Because if we're just teaching one perspective, they're going to have struggles in having a closed mindset.
You know, something that's really important for us to think about is our students right now are going to school every day, and they're looking and searching for those things that are going to make them financially wealthy. We know that personal wealth is very important to the generation today. And so I would challenge us as educators right now to take a moment to analyze, are we really preparing our students to be personally wealthy in the way we're teaching them and educating them?
I think currently education is in the mindset of preparing for the long haul, preparing for the end mindset that students will be successful eventually. If they go through the course and through all of the pathways of university traditionally. However, within a classroom now, there's so many young entrepreneurs that I have in my current school that come up with their own clothing lines and are doing their own drop shipping. And for some of them, they learned it in school through some of the classes that we offer, while many of them, they learned it from their friends. They learned it from TikTok. They learned it from YouTube. And I question the validity of the information that they learned. And I'm fearful and apprehensive of the businesses that they're starting up, because anything is out there when it comes to technology and information. And the caring teacher heart in me, I want to teach them before they fail and mess up, so that way they can be successful while they're here during their school years. So I think it does not currently meet that need for students, but we really should.
How about you? What do you think?
As a student, I don't currently feel like it is. Like I've said in the past, I feel like there should be classes based around business. Classes that teach you how to start, how to do that basis, how to set that basis, and how to follow that process in order to start. Everything after that is not up to the person to continue to learn, but in college and stuff, you continue to learn it. In high school, it should be at least the start of it, where you learn the basis. But as of right now, I don't feel as if we're, as students, learning how to make money, how to learn these methods that all of these successful businessmen do follow, all these processes that they do follow in order to get to where they're at.
We're actually, by not doing that, giving room for the influencers to become the source of information. And we're really giving the influencers the opportunity to monetize that information, when in reality, the students should have the entitlement to the information at the school site. And, you know, the more I've gotten into social media in the last, year or so, I've been able to awaken to an understanding of information that's out there, and some that are true and some that are not. I'll speak. My son just opened his business a couple months ago, and he was emulating information he was getting on TikTok, which was not accurate, and how you open a business, how you incorporate, how do you design, certain things. And so that has awakened in me a need that we have to have a structured way by which the students are learning it. And it also has brought to my attention that we have to understand that money is important to our students today, because they've been aware of the value of money in life. When I was growing up, my parents never spoke to us about money. That was not a conversation that was held in front of us. We never knew how much the light was or none of those things. But I think the students today have awakened to the value of money, the importance of money, and the impact it has on the experiences of your life. And I think by us not mentioning that at all in our educational offerings, we are already starting with a program that's not meeting the needs of the students based on where they want to start. And secondly, money used to be something that was important to us at our adult stages. And more, the needs of students are so economically aligned, meaning they have a financial price to it, that students have become more awakened to a need for money. And when you're not telling them how to find that, they're already saying you're not the expert that I want to listen to.
And if I may add,
of course,
with the current economy, it's like you have to make money. You cannot survive without it. And even if you might not want to be a millionaire, you might not want to have thousands of dollars in your bank account, you still need that money in order to be able to survive in our current society. And with schools not teaching the students how to make that money, even if it's the bare minimum, they have to learn themselves that they have to work for their money. They have to do this, they have to do that. And it most times ends up in them stressing over it. And a lot of the time they cave under that stress, and they end up struggling in their futures because they cannot manage to find the money for tuition or maybe to start their own businesses. They can't find the money to do so, so they get stuck in minimum wage, struggling to live life.
And piggybacking off what you're saying, I totally agree. But also, if we don't meet those needs, they will find it in places that are not
the best source,
the best ways. And it's happened before. And now that we know, right, we're aware that there's this need, we should be able to teach them, help them get what they want, but like in a professional way, in the right way. Because obviously we, a lot of the demographic that some of our schools have obviously have lower income, they struggle a little bit. And like you mentioned, parents have those conversations. I have students that have jobs at a younger age because they want to support their family and help. And it's a job, like it's a duty that you have as a brother or a sister. And they will find that, like how to earn that money in other places.
I also think that's something that we should take into account and have a discussion about, and it may not be in this episode, but another episode, is the fact that does the school day need to look the same every day? Or is there room for one day a week for it to be more real world school? There's an influencer that has a community. It's called the Real World Community. And in that community, he's educating the young students on the practical parts of life. And I think we as educators are failing to do that in our school sites. We are not really exposing that. So we might need to look at just the traditional day differently to have students have that opportunity to be able to access that information. I want to say thank you, and on behalf of LWJ Jeffrey, I really appreciate you taking time to have this discussion. This is just the beginning of a meaningful campaign and effort, because we know that currently the way education is being delivered, the expectations of what education looks like is not meeting the needs of the students. We may get a score on a test, we may get an A as a grading, but are we really preparing our students once they cross the stage and they get their diploma and they have that final handshake with that principal, to be able to on the next day have a plan, execute a plan, and be able to benefit from the plan. And I think that it is something that all of us need to really take serious, because it is the future of our country. It's not just a handbook or a curriculum guide that we're creating. It is the pathway for our students, the future of our country, to be able to lead this country to greatness. So again, I want to say thank you for coming. I really appreciate the perspectives. And to our listeners and our viewers, I hope that this podcast has continued to awaken in you the absolute focus that all of us need to have to changing the way we're educating our youngsters. They're not interested in what we're providing them. They're feeling resentful to school because they're not getting what they need to be able to be personally and generationally stable, financially, and in their lives have the experiences that they're seeing. What one day was an unknown to us, today is very visible to our young lives, because they're able to access it at their fingertips on their phone. As they scroll up and down in their virtual platforms, their social media platforms, they see life that they want to live. And that life that they want to live requires actions on their part, and they don't feel equipped, and then they resent the fact that we are not equipping them to be able to access that life. And so I encourage us to urgently have those conversations, have the openness to know that change is inevitable, and that yes, we have to visit the past, but only to construct the future and challenge it. We should not visit the past to bring it back, because the past will never be its same iteration in the present or in the future, because it's an ever-changing landscape that we're dealing with. I want to take this opportunity to not only extend our collective admiration to the educators worldwide that are listening to this podcast, because we have the most difficult job in the world. We are the ones that are the starting point and the ending point to every child's future. And we are responsible for their well-being mentally, physically, and financially. And as a result, we have the greatest pressure on our shoulders, which is their lives. I want to commend and thank each educator for choosing this career as your profession, as your calling, because it is the most gratifying career and the one that makes the greatest change, because we touch the lives of everyone that leads this world in one way or another. Your job is not easy. Everyone understands that. We have an empathetic view to it because we are you and this present in this podcast right now as educators. And I do challenge you, though, to step outside your comfort zone and understand that we must make a difference in how we deliver instruction if we want our students to stay engaged and come through the doors of our schools each and every day, and not turn to the staged information, but be able to have access to the real information. Thank you for joining us today. Please make sure that you are taking this information not as experts, but as a perspective of reflection for each and every one of you to have that conversation at the table. Stay inspired.